Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today, as everyone knows, is Youm-e-Istehsal that is being observed all across Pakistan and all across the world, wherever Kashmiris are present. 5th anniversary of this day when the Indian government abrogated Articles 370 and 35A, hereby splitting the former state into two territories directly ruled by New Delhi. The implications have been enormous for the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The implications have been manifold, whether it be on a human level, whether it be politically, whether it be in the education sphere, whether it be on their rights and so on, and the list goes on. To add to that, it's a persecution of all the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, those who are incarcerated, those who've been killed, those who've been maimed, those who've been injured, those who've been raped, and those children who are left without any source of family because their family is either in jails or has been killed. To add to that is this false image that India has been giving across the world, that the Indian held Jammu and Kashmir Valley is in fact a very safe place to live in and is properly controlled, and everything is going on as per the rules of law and humanity, whereas the truth is exactly the opposite. We in this program will try to decipher the realities behind Article 370, 35A, their abrogation, the outcome and the resolve of the Kashmiri people to continue to fight for their right to self-determination, and also the backing of Pakistan politically, morally, diplomatically, to highlight the cause of the oppressed people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir on all the different fora possible. We've very lately done that in ASEAN, we've been doing that in the United Nations, we've done that on all important fora, and today also was no exception, where it be our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, our President Asif Ali Zardari Sahab, our military heads, they've all highlighted the importance of the 5th of August and how important is not only the resolve of the Kashmiri people to continue to fight for their right to self-determination, but also the fight that Pakistan is backing as far as the political, diplomatic and moral support of the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, as enshrined in the rules of the United Nations. We'll also be understanding the importance of the UN in this case. We've been joined by different guests, one in particular in the studios, and the rest will be joining us online with time. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my guest, who has come all the way from Azad Jammu and Kashmir to discuss this very important day and this very important issue with us. She is none other than Dr. Asma Shakir Khuwaja, Executive Director CISS in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much, Dr. Asma, to have joined us. Dr. Asma, Youm-e-Istehsal is being observed today, as it has been observed since the last few years in Pakistan, to register the protest against the Indian government's illegal action of the 5th of August 2019. Indian state terrorism, barbarism, violations of human rights by the Indian government and the forces in the valley have been going on unabated even before 2019, but have gained steam post 2019. 5 years after the abrogation of these articles, what is the resolve of the people of the Indian held valley?
The resolve of people, Kashmiris in illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is very clear. They till to date, after even 5 years of revocation of Article 370, they have refused to accept Modi's decision to revoke Article 370. No one from the valley was able to win the elections in these recent elections who supported or who supports slightest who have slightest support for BJP. No one won. Or who won those elections? Those who are critical of the revocation of Article 370 or those who want independence.
BJP did not even field a candidate in Kashmir because it knew what the outcome will be.
That they will, but they feel their proxies. BJP supported candidates were there, but no one could win. And you can see that Abdul Rashid won with 3 lakh votes. So this is what people say. People have refused to surrender their basic right to choose, even in front of the atrocities and subjugated policies of BJP. And you ask me, when when BJP revoked Article 370 in order to I would say honey trap people of Kashmir. They said that it would bring economic prosperity and it will bring social cohesion, political liberties and freedom, but nothing happened even after 5 years. And where BJP stands today, BJP stands that today they are they are accusing, falsely accusing and unable to register the indigenous civil resistance movement as an indigenous movement which has been started, because BJP didn't provide any space even to breathe to the Kashmiri people. You see what they did whenever, like when there was so-called G20 tourism summit there.
What a sham, taking people to the illegal valley and then saying that everything is all right.
And here I would slightly want to add that 2-3 days back, BJP has sacked almost 8 military and police high officials on the charges of terror financing and drug trafficking. And they did not issue those names to media because they want to hide the identity of those criminals. But most of them are deputed in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this is where BJP government stands today after revocation of Article 370.
All right. Dr. Asma, also there were different addresses today on the occasion, and I'd like to begin with our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who said that Pakistan will continue to extend its strong moral, political and diplomatic support to the Kashmiri people till the realization of their inalienable right to self-determination. But what he also said, he said in the interest of lasting peace and security in South Asia, India needs to move from dispute denial to dispute resolution. Is India willing to do so?
Actually, Modi does everything which can be a political dividend for him in the domestic vote bank. So definitely right now BJP doesn't look like in a mood to do this at the cost of losing their radical Hindu vote bank. But you know, like when we talk about Kashmir, and as you discussed the statement of Prime Minister of Pakistan, this reminds me that I read somewhere someone said that the difference between Kashmir conflict and Palestine conflict is that Palestine doesn't have a Pakistan. So this is Pakistan's diplomatic moral support is always for 76 years. India cannot deter Pakistan from supporting our Kashmiri brothers by any means. Whenever Kashmiri brothers need us, Pakistan and Pakistanis stand by them, whether it is like even the earthquake of 2005. So Kashmir is Pakistan and Pakistan is Kashmir. This is what late Kashmiri leader Sayyid Ali Gilani said, and this is so true. Like every prime minister, I think Kashmir and nuclear technology, these are the two issues on which there is no difference of opinion.
But you know, if you talk of Kashmir, even Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah said that Kashmir is the jugular vein of Pakistan. You know, it starts all the way from the very beginning when Pakistan came, was made independent, and the fight has, by the Kashmiri people in the Indian Hell Valley continues to date from 1947, and all of that begins with the United Nations, the first resolution that goes to United Nations, and it's India. I mean, it's very sarcastic, but it was India who went to the United Nations to have this issue resolved. Since then, India has denied all efforts made by the United Nations in order to find an amicable solution to this issue, and decades have passed by. How important, in your point of view, the role of the United Nations remains today?
Kashmir is an unfinished agenda on UN platform. That is why United Nations Military Observers Mission is located on LOC even till to date. So it is basically, if it is the unfinished agenda of the UNO, then it is the prime responsibility of UNO to provide, to facilitate the right to self-determination to Kashmiri people. Because if you ask me that what is the problem, actual problem, or what is the reason of Kashmir conflict, it is the only reason is India's denial to provide basic human right to Kashmiri people, which is their right to choose.
To self-determination, exactly.
Yeah, their right to choose which country they want to be with. It is as simple as it. And UNO itself in 1948, empowered Kashmiris that they have equal right to decide about their future. As per Radcliffe Award, they should be given their right to plebiscite. And what is right to plebiscite? Right to choose. So, if UN has empowered the Kashmiri people, then it is UN's responsibility to ensure that they are empowered and the plebiscite is done. So, UN cannot shrug off their responsibility, and it is not shrugging off. That is why UN Mogib is there for last almost like 75, 74 years. So,
but the fact is UN Mogib is not there in India, is it?
Yeah, but they are in New Delhi, they are not in Srinagar,
yes,
but they have their office in New Delhi. So, it is okay if India doesn't, as I always say, that through a constitutional change, Pakistan can declare illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir as part of Pakistan without the result of plebiscite.
You know, this is where I come in. So many resolutions in the United Nations, because we were talking of UN. As far as the UNSC resolution 38 para 2 is concerned, it clearly states that neither party to the dispute can bring about a material change in the situation in Kashmir, and India has done a contravention to this very United Nations Security Council resolution 38.
That is why immediately after 5th August, UN Security Council has a closed door special summit or meeting on this issue. That is why. And what Modi says that Jammu Kashmir is part of India, then immediately Modi himself, after revocation of Article 370, internationalized the Kashmir issue. UN had consecutive 3 meetings on, UN Security Council had 3 meetings on Jammu and Kashmir dispute. We all know that Jammu and Kashmir is determinant of regional peace and security. It is and it is detrimental as well for the regional peace and security, because all escalations occurred from one issue or another issue related to illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And here it is also Indian leaders need to understand that whenever there was a movement of civil resistance, that happened when Kashmiri people felt helpless and hopeless in front of Indian rigidness, subjugation, brutal policies, aggressive postures, and all civil resistance movement ended after negotiations. In last 76 years, Indian government, Indian forces could not eliminate a civil resistance movement through use of power. So this time they also need to understand it, instead of looking for different shoulders on which they can put responsibility on. Right now, what is happening in Kashmir, it is only due to the denial of their basic needs, as described and elaborated by famous scholar Edward Azar. Indian government denied the basic need of Kashmiri people, which is their right to plebiscite, right to self-determination, and any other act around it to heal the Kashmiris will not be helpful, because only awarding them their right to choose would heal them, their right to plebiscite, their right to self-determination. And while denying that basic right, India cannot blame any other country on earth for instigating, supporting, manufacturing civil resistance movement in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because theories say, scholars believe that such a civil resistance movement, this starts from within. When people feel they are not associated with a certain setup of a state. That should be understood.
All right. We've also been joined by Ahmer Bilal Soofi. He is an international law expert. Ahmer Bilal Soofi sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Ahmer Bilal Soofi sahab, what does the law say as far as the current situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A is concerned? I was just talking to Dr. Asma, and I was saying that under the UNSC resolution 38, its para 2 clearly states that neither party to the dispute can bring about a material change to the situation in Kashmir, and that has happened 5 years back and continues to have its effects or ramifications. What does the international or regional law say? Can the Kashmiris contact, say, the International Court, the International Criminal Court, or the International Court of Justice, or any other international forum?
Well, thank you very much for inviting. First of all, let's be clear that the Article 370 and 35, as you partly said, the way they have been handled and the way the title of the occupied Jammu and Kashmir is attempted to be taken over by the Indian government is against international law, it's against bilateral treaties, and it is against the Constitution of India itself. And if you were and I were to listen to the Supreme Court proceedings in India that were live telecasted, and one would realize that there are solid legal grounds challenging the way Article 370 has been misused or has been misconstrued to come to a conclusion that it has become part of India. I believe that Pakistan has a lot of options, and so have the Kashmiris, to take this matter forward in terms of developing legal arguments and in terms of various forums. Unfortunately, when we say we want to take the issue of Kashmir to a forum, we invariably think only of a judicial forum. Whereas in international diplomacy and international law, a lot of administrative forums are available where such issues can be flagged, raised, and consistently raised. We have forums of the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly, which is relating to self-determination, or Kashmiris as an NGOs representing, or their bodies have been registered in Europe, in US, they could also flag this issue at such forums. In addition to that, you have the Office of the UN Secretary General. The Office of the UN Secretary General is the custodian, administrative control is exercised. There's a deployment of the UN mission on the in this area. So there is a natural linkage of United Nations with this issue. A material change that has been brought on the ground unilaterally by one party is well documented, admitted, and its veracity has been not accepted by the international community. Please do recall that not even a single country has agreed or has consented or has formally welcomed the 5th August 2019 presidential order. Countries have stayed quiet, but India wanted they should welcome this, or they should partly say that this is legitimate in accordance with international law. None of the countries came out saying that, because that is not the case. So clearly, this is something that India is doing domestically for its audience, but the consequences, it is simultaneously laying a claim over the Pakistani side of territory and also with the China. This makes China also a de facto party to a Kashmir dispute and a Kashmir issue, because the claim that India is raising in the impugned presidential order is also against the territories that are exercised, on whom the control is exercised by the government of China. So I believe there is a need for Pakistan and China legal teams, foreign offices, to exchange notes with each other in terms of developing a clear legal strategy on these matters.
All right. Bilal, so Visa, before I go to the international reaction, I'd like to, you mentioned China, so let's go to China's position on the Kashmir issue. Now, the Kashmir Media Service states that China's position on the issue is consistent and clear, as per a statement that has recently been released, stating that Kashmir issue is a dispute left over from history and should be properly resolved through peaceful means in accordance with the UN Charter, relevant Security Council resolutions, and bilateral agreements. The Chinese spokesperson has also urged all parties involved to avoid taking unilateral actions that could further complicate the situation. How do you see these statements?
Well, obviously, China is supporting Pakistan in its traditional stance. But at the same time, China is adversely affected and aggrieved by the 5th August 2019 order. If you read that order, it clearly is also against Chinese territory. That's what makes Pakistan and China suddenly they have been forced by India to come together on the issue of Kashmir. So, in other words, the territories of Kashmir, India has laid a controversial claim on them. And not only those territories that Pakistan exercises jurisdiction on, but also China. And in addition to that, the Indian government is rethinking about the Indus Water Treaty. And they have already communicated to Pakistan their intent to reopen. That's a very dangerous development because that too is in respect of waters that flow from the territory that is in terms of exercising a disputed territory. So all these things create a situation where Pakistan needs to take stock of situation afresh. As I said, regionally engage with China in terms of what matters and what measures need to be taken by Pakistan and China together in terms of guaranteeing security of their territorial sovereignty. And also because there is a commonality of numerous issues, like we have a line of control, they have issues with that, and then China and India has line of actual contact, which stretches for thousands of kilometers. And they have similar issues. There is an issue of upper riparian and lower riparian between China and India. We also have a similar issue with India. So I think the commonalities, the legal commonalities, create a very unique convergence for Pakistani and Chinese governments to work together vis-a-vis India.
In all of this, geostrategic or geopolitical scenario, the role of the Western powers becomes very important, especially those who consider India their very strong allies. I'd like to refer to what our President Asif Ali Zardari Saab said today, and he said that it's crucial that the international community urge India to end its human rights violations in Kashmir and implement the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Will the world take notice? You said that the world did not agree with the August 5 decisions, but they have stayed more or less mum on that. Shouldn't there be some kind of pressure tactic implied on India, if not overtly, then covertly?
Well, what kind of pressure tactics needs to be taken? I, as a lawyer, can tell you quite a few of them. That's not a big deal. There are a lot of legal options that Pakistan can take. Challenging 5th August 2019 at various forums. The legal nature, the legal arguments, one can be very clear on that. The real issue is there a political will to take them at a governmental level? Because as an academic, as a lawyer, one can suggest, but eventually the final word is that of the sitting government. So I think the sitting government or the political parties of the state have to come together in terms of identifying the way forward. Which particular way forward do they wish to take? Do they wish to trade with India and freeze this matter? Do they wish to insist that UN resolutions will be the governing text? Or do they want to go for Musharraf formula? Or do they want to create a new creative solution on Kashmir? Which exactly route political forces of this country want to take will be really the way the discussion has to be also centered. Because will of the people of Pakistan is reflected by the political forces. So they have to come together around the table, and an expert or a diplomat has to brief them, and then they will tell us which way to go. So I think while we look at what externally Pakistan can do, internally there is a need for a political consensus on way forward in Kashmir.
All right, but what about the world at large? What about those countries that can easily exert that pressure on India because they are working hand in hand or hand in glove with the Indian government on different important matters, especially economy and, of course, civil defense?
So, certainly Indian economic interests force all other countries to stay quiet, to look the other way, as we say. But at the same time, we also have to be a lead advocate for Kashmiris, as we have been for the last 6-7 decades. So I think we also have to find time and space to create a momentum, and that will be mirror imaged in response by various countries that we will interface. At the moment, not much is being pushed from the Pakistani side, and I think that is also one of the reasons why the international community is going quiet.
All right, the Soofi Sahib, stay with us. We have to revert to our guest in the studios, Dr. Asma. Bilal, Soofi Sahib says that Pakistan needs to be more proactive. Haven't we already quite proactive? Haven't we gone to the ASEAN very recently, where we highlighted the Kashmir issue at the United Nations? Whenever we get an opportunity, our permanent representative there has been highlighting this issue time and again. We have highlighted this issue on other fora as well. What more needs to be done in your point of view by Pakistan to become, for this issue to be more actively highlighted?
There is always room for improvement, I would say, and definitely Pakistan's policy can be more proactive, more effective. Like when we use the term proactive, I would like to use effective. We have to see that how we are representing the case of Kashmiris and how Kashmiris are representing the case of Kashmir. It is really important because I remember, or as you know, that the Afghan conflict was humanized due to a noble kite runner. So we have to see that what has been done to humanize Kashmir conflict, so that world would understand that it is a conflict where humans are suffering from 76 years, whether these are divided families, what literature we have developed, published to highlight the pain and grief and agony and trauma of Kashmiri youth, Kashmiri people, women, what we have done for this, and answer is nothing. So don't you think that we have to be more, in order to be more effective, we need to produce literature on Kashmir, on the sufferings and on the problems of the Kashmiri nation, Kashmir region is facing for last 76 years. Have we ever tried to document the martyrs of Jammu genocide? Those 300,000 innocent souls were killed only because they were Muslims, and in case of referendum or voting, they would vote for Pakistan, and that was their only crime, that they were mercilessly killed by Hindu radicals. Did we ever try to document their pain of their families?
I'm sure
and
this is documented. We've been highlighting that so often.
In shape of literature.
Okay.
Because you see, when there is a novel, people and international audience, they read about it and then they feel connected to the conflict. That is really important. That when I asked while writing my book, Ahmed Raza Kasuri, that how you achieved so much on Kashmir conflict, like the cross border trade and bus service, and he said we replaced politics with humanity and humanized the Kashmir conflict, and it is the first step anyone can take to humanize the conflict so that world can feel the suffering. If you remember, the famine in Ethiopia was highlighted because of a picture of a dying child. So what it humanized the conflict. I'm sure you know that recently there are more than 5 Kashmiri journalists from Indian occupied Kashmir who won international prize for feature photographs.
But they couldn't leave the Indian territories. They were not allowed.
The girl couldn't leave, and 3 other were studying in the US, so they received their prize. So, but these efforts are needed. We need to create. We need the world to feel that how brutally Indian policies are affecting Kashmiri people, and then we can stage, if we can make movies which find space in Oscar, in Grammy.
Like India has been using its soft power to give a very different and false narrative as far as Kashmir is concerned.
And we don't need to use soft power, but only need to write the truth. We only need to write the pain, and that's it. So there is always a room for improvement. There is always room for being more effective, more proactive, more vigilant. That I think we need to be more vigilant to predict India's or Modi's moves in Jammu and Kashmir, because every day Modi comes up with a new method of torture. Right now, like for last 8 years, Modi government is practicing threat of over proportion punishment to silence Kashmiris. And I ask you today, when you see the statistics of peace and security in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, do you think that fear of over proportion torture worked in Modi's favor? Answer is no. Anyone from BJP or supported by BJP does not have any face saving in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this is what Modi has earned today.
All right. Dr. Asma, our DG ISPR, Lieutenant Ahmed Sharif, while talking to media and outputting this very afternoon on the occasion of Youm-e-Istehsal, says the resolution of Kashmir in the light of the UN resolutions also, as our Prime Minister has said, and as per the aspirations of Kashmiris, is inevitable for durable peace and stability in the region. My question is, with all these human rights abuses that have been going on, why are the international human rights organizations and countries who claim to be champions of human rights not doing the needful? There are reports that come out, but nothing goes beyond statements. Why is that?
First of all, these are not human rights abuses, these are war crimes. These are crimes against humanity. When 10,000 Kashmiri women are missing after 2019, that is crime against humanity. When you find those mass graves, when the chemical weapons have been used, when the collective punishment has been exercised, even to the innocent people, only to create a social resentment against resistance, then that is crime against humanity. When a child is being kidnapped, raped and murdered, and those who demand justice, they've been considered as traitors. And there are protests in favor of the criminals who did that to little Asifa, if you remember her case. So this is not a human rights violation, this is crimes against humanity. You know, in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the unemployment ratio is more than 16%, and in rest of India it is 6%, and that 6% caused Modi like his majority in Lok Sabha elections. Indians didn't vote for him because of the unemployment ratio, and Kashmiris are suffering from like 16% unemployment. You know, Modi is using climate change as, or Modi has weaponized climate change in Jammu and Kashmir. They are using climate change to disempower Kashmiri people. The production of the zafran has been reduced. India is importing duty-free apples from the USA, while and as the result, the farmer of Kashmir is suffering from it. You know, the production of apple has also been decreased, and the land which is the agro land, the number of agro land has been reduced in Jammu and Kashmir.
So is that to heighten pressure on the Kashmiri people, so that they rescind from their this inalienable right to self-determination?
Yeah, you know, like last year Indian forces were destroying apple farms, orchards, only to punish Kashmiris. Is it the way that any so-called democracy behaves?
Or speaking of democracy and behaving, you know, there's a fresh change in the reservation rules as well in IIOJK. The new rules which grant 10% reservation to the Pahadi community have increased the reserved quota to 60%, leaving only 40% for the general population. Isn't India, or has it been the Indian intention since day one to pit one Kashmiri against the other, so that they cannot strive together and cannot be one, to fight against India?
Indian government is playing its card on the premise of divide and rule, and that is how they put Kashmiris in economic stress, so that they should not think about philosophy or ideology of freedom, and they are more worried about how to feed their children. They are putting those reservations because they want Kashmiri people to fight for quota system. You know, like what has happened in Bangladesh recently for the quota politics. So maybe Modi, the advisors of Mr. Modi have been inspired by that. But for last 76 years, no such policy was ever successful. Modi tried to polarize Kashmiri society. On the one side, you see that alcohol is banned in Gujarat, in Bihar and some other Indian states. But in Kashmir, they allowed alcohol. Why? and then at the same time they banned the Juma prayers in Jamia Masjid. They put the Mr. this Mirwais Umar Farooq has not been released or out of house arrest yet. So India is playing every card, whether it is religious card, whether it is diluting the religious identity of Kashmiris. You know, recently they have increased the authority and powers of governor of Kashmir. Why? When as per Supreme Court, Indian Supreme Court's order, Modi is conducting elections in September. Why they need it that they should reduce the powers of the newly of that parliament before it is even being selected? So why governor should be more empowered in Kashmir?
All right, let's talk about some more actions that the Indian government has taken vis-a-vis Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir after the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A. July 2022, Chief Election Officer in the occupied valley announces granting voting rights to any Indian citizen, even temporary residents. This would add almost 2.5 million additional voters, including non-locals. May 2022, India's Delimitation Commission announces a plan to carve out new electoral constituencies aiming at giving Jammu greater representation to reduce the political weight of Muslims in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly and shift the balance to Hindus in India. 3.4 million plus so-called domicile certificates are issued to non-Kashmiri outsiders who become eligible after abrogation of Article 370 35A of the Indian Constitution. And then this sees the Jammu and Kashmir Waqf Board and all the properties across the region, which is of course a drive to take control of the prominent places of religious significance to Muslims in the occupied territory, including shrines. All of this, isn't this a clear assault on the Kashmiris, on their due rights, on their Muslim heritage, and I can go on and on?
Yeah, it is clear assault on three things: Kashmiri identity, humanity and democracy. And this becomes very ironic when the BJP's leader, late Atal Bihari Vajpayee, stated that the Kashmir conflict can only be resolved through three spheres: Kashmiri identity, humanity and democracy. And only these three spheres are on the hit list of Mr. Modi and his advisors. Whatever has been done, that is part of India's policy to dilute Kashmir conflict. Now they want to resolve Kashmir conflict through transforming it into a Hindu majority state. And that is why few government official websites of India, they declare Kashmir as a Hindu majority state. And one of the former union ministers of Mr. Modi stated that there are 50,000 temples in Jammu and Kashmir, and in fact there are less than 4,000 temples, and even those temples are like from 500 years before Christ, and it is like before the Islamic or Muslim heritage came into being in Kashmir. But this is not an issue. This is the issue of what Kashmiris need. You know, this Modi regime, through curriculum, through government school learning, have tried to set a certain mindset of Kashmiri people. In this January 2004, almost 9 journalists were arrested in India, and out of those 9, 6 were from Kashmir. What happened to Khurram Parvez? You name it, and no Kashmiri why journalists are behind the bars in Kashmir? There are several articles. India is considered, according to international surveys, as the most dangerous country for journalists. There are articles in New York Times, in Washington Post about that, how India is a dangerous country for journalists and how it is very difficult to do journalism in India only because of Modi's policies. To, like, when you see the coverage of Indian media, you see that Kashmiri perspective doesn't exist on public media or on private channels, and that is why they are called Gudi media by their political opponents.
And whenever somebody wants to highlight this or criticize Narendra Modi's statements or policies, whether it be a national channel or international channel like the BBC, the Indian government does the needful and ostracizes either that national or the international channel.
Arundhati Roy was convicted because into 2010, she stated that Kashmiri's right or demand for right to plebiscite or self-determination is correct. Only for that crime. And is it a crime? Can you imagine any country in the world doing that, and the international community is only witnessing it? And that is why they have wrongly inflicted sense of superiority among Indian government. And that is why they have become mass murderer or murderer or killing their political opponents across the globe, because that false sense of superiority has been inculcated in them by the Western powers, and now they themselves are suffering from it. Otherwise, I was reading yesterday an article that India needs 75 years to earn 1/4 of the per capita income a US citizen is getting today. 1/4 of that income India would be able to earn after 75 years. So this is the reality. But this false sense of superiority, India is emerging power, India is economic.
This is a bubble that you feel is going to burst very soon. We've also been joined by Dr. Waqas Harikosa. He is a senior analyst. Dr. Waqas, thank you very much to have joined us. There's a report that has been taken out by the Kashmir Media Service, and it talks about different unconstitutional moves, and gives facts and figures as far as those people who've been incarcerated or killed. It talks about senior Hurriyat leaders, Muhammad Ashraf Sehrai, Altaf Ahmad Shah, who are among the 223 Kashmiris who have died in fake encounters in the custody of Indian police. It talks about 2,459 people who've been critically injured due to the use of brute force, including firing of bullets, pellets and tear gas shells by the Indian troops. It also says that the killings since the 5th of August 2019 have been higher than those in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 19. It talks about the killings in fake encounters and in custody in the garb of violent coordinated search operations. It talks about killings by troops that have rendered 69 women widowed and 190 children orphan, damaging around 1,124 houses and structures, and molesting or disgracing 134 women and arresting 24,004 people, including at least 33 women or girls, during coordinated search operations. Does New Delhi feel, in your point of view, that it would be able to silence the Kashmiris this way?
Thank you very much for having me. I mean, there are a few points we need to understand why this 5th of August exactly happened. I mean, what unfolded was that 3-4 dimensions are quite important to understand that on this entire freedom struggle. One is, of course, the political resistance of the people of Jammu and Kashmir against occupation one. The second was, of course, the economic factor that tried to cripple them economically. And of course, then the overall societal fabric that they have tried to change and dominate. Now, if you come to the first resistance element, I guess there was a plan that despite brutal force, human rights violations, and strict laws, and I guess the laws that are beyond imagination, like you can keep imprison people without any reason or logic, made the Public Safety Act and others. If you see that, this is actually the continuation of that after 5th of August, when you don't have the government, actually they try to imprison all the political voices, all the political people, because they actually don't have that political answer to a very political, genuine question of right to self-determination and their fundamental rights. So this is, of course, not new, maybe entirely new for the world, because India also tried to use their own media and tried to silence and curb. In fact, who placed a lot of restrictions on electronic, digital and print media over there, so that these news coverages, analyses and reports don't come out. You also see that UN rapporteurs and special mechanisms kept on asking about their access over there. It was also denied, because there was only one reason, that they don't want these news and violations come out of the Valley one. The second, economically, if you have seen that, I mean, there have been many measures and all that, the way that they try to sort of subjugate people and cripple their economic empowerment and economic situation, so that the resistance factor could, come down. And third, of course, if you see geographically and society-wise, the way they try to isolate people, pitch communities against each other. Jammu Kashmir is still a very diverse, but of course, a society where there was a lot of harmony among people and of different communities. So I guess that was one of another target, that you we have to bifurcate the state into different union territories and then pitching people against each other. Despite all these things, if you see that after this much time, if you see the political answer is still yet to be answered, question has to be answered. There is no political setup. BJP is still afraid. I guess from the last elections, people have shown that they've absolutely didn't accept any decision, and the entire their voting pattern behavior showed BJP their door. And second,
and the fact is, Dr. Waqas, that despite all of these efforts, and all of these brutalities, the Indian government or the Indian forces or the Indian police or the Indian paramilitary forces have not been able to suppress the struggle of the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir for their inalienable right to self-determination. I was talking to a Kashmiri leader some time back, and he said something that was extremely important. He said you can kill, maim, injure, incarcerate as many Kashmiris as you can, but this fight for our rights will continue, because this fight is an idea, a philosophy that cannot be burnt by burning papers, that cannot be burnt or maimed by killing or incarcerating people. This philosophy remains in the hearts of people in Kashmir and will continue to be there till they achieve their due right to self-determination. Thank you very much, Dr. Waqas Hari Kausar, and thank you very much, Dr. Asma Shakir Khuwaja, to have joined us and to have discussed on this important day the past, present and future of this drive of the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to continue to fight for their right to self-determination. We wish them all the very best, and Pakistan will continue to support them politically, morally and diplomatically. Thank you very much to you, and thank you very much, Dr. Waqas, to have joined us. With that, we come to an end of this special edition of Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.